Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. It is wonderful to be back. We are so excited to be here for a special live edition of the Liz Wheeler Show. Tim, a little technical note. I'm hearing myself in my own ear, so I don't know how we switch that. I might just have to take my earbud right on out of there until we get that fixed so that I don't have to hear an echo of myself. Guys, it's a new year, but it's also a very special day today. For those who observe it, it is Insurrection Day. Happy January 6th, the day that Kamala Harris has to certify the election victory for Donald J. Trump, the incoming 47th president. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited to see the inauguration. We're T-minus 14 days from the day that Donald Trump takes office. I still cannot believe that this is real, that this is happening. We have a really big show for you today. We actually have bomb guests all week. So I always feel reinvigorated. You probably feel the same way after, we took a step back over the Christmas holiday. Well, we kind of took a step back. We were still interested in the Mike Johnson speaker race. We were still interested in the Elon H-1B visa stuff. Can we really take a break when it comes to politics? But I feel refreshed. I took a lot of time with my family. We had Christmas with my family. We had Christmas with my husband's family. My children are old enough that Christmas is just magical for them. And it's actually really fun to be on the parental side of Christmas now that I have children. I actually didn't anticipate that it would be as much fun as it is to be parents of young children at Christmas. But I hope that you had a wonderful Christmas too. We have absolutely phenomenal guests this week, so make sure that you're subscribed on all platforms so that you do not miss these interviews. A couple of things we're going to talk about today. Like I said, happy Insurrection Day for those who observe. We have bombshell new information about the January 6th pipe bomber. You remember the guy that put an operative explosive device outside of both the DNC and the RNC in Washington, D.C. on the evening of January 5th, the eve of Insurrection Day, like the Insurrection Day, not the anniversary. We have bombshell new information about this guy, really crazy stuff. There's a new House report. It's from Congressman Loudermilk and Congressman Massie, and they investigated the Liz Cheney January 6th Select Committee to find out, why don't we know anything about this pipe bomber? Of all the investigations that have taken place surrounding January 6th, how come we don't know anything about this guy? Well, what they found is crazy. They found that the FBI actually narrowed phone data. They did that geofencing where they track the phones and the pathway that the person carrying the phone takes in order to identify that person based on their behavior, that advertising data that comes with your phone. And they narrowed it down to one phone number and one person whose steps matched the pipe bomber. And then it just, the path went dead. Or did it? Did the path actually go dead, or did Congress and Liz Cheney decide to let the path go dead? Did the FBI decide to let the path go dead? Seems like a little bit more than a coincidence to me. Also, Stephen D'Antuono, he's an FBI agent who was involved in the Gretchen Whitmer Fednapping. He was also involved in January 6th. This is a nasty, nasty guy in the FBI. He lied. He lied to the January 6th, even to Liz Cheney's January 6th committee. He said that the phone data from one of the major carriers was corrupted and therefore they couldn't track the pipe bomber. That's not true. Loudermilk and Massie found, and this is according to the phone carrier themselves, none of the data that they gave to the January 6th committee or to the FBI was corrupt. And the FBI specifically never told the phone carrier that any data was corrupt. So Stephen D'Antuono of the FBI was lying about that. Seems pretty obvious that there's a cover-up. So we have an investigative reporter who analyzed both the original videotape that the FBI released of the pipe bomber. You remember that grainy video showing the guy walking up to the bench. It's a really glitchy and gritty pixelated video. You can't identify any facial features on the guy. The FBI released a little bit more footage just last week. So an investigative reporter who found a serious anomaly in the first batch of FBI tapes is going to join us today to talk about that and the new footage. All right, Darren Beattie, the founder of Revolver News, joins me today. Darren, thanks for joining us. You have been reporting on the January 6th pipe bomber, I think longer than anybody else that I've been following. I remember reading, I think it was the fall of 2022, this piece that you had written on Revolver News. We'll link it so that other people can read it too, about the original video that the FBI had released of that pipe bomber, the one where he's walking towards the park bench. And it's a really glitchy, pixelated, kind of weird looking video. And you had written that there were some serious anomalies in that video, not just, an outdated camera or bad footage. So, but that's not even where you started reporting on the pipe bomber. But that's kind of where I want to start today. Can you tell us, before we get to this new footage that the FBI dropped last week of the pipe bomber, can you tell us what the problems were that you saw with that original footage?
Sure. I think anomaly is a great term. It's a generous term. The January 6th pipe bomb hoax is nothing but a conglomeration of anomalies. It's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to discrepancies that are utterly implausible so as to defy belief and strain the very boundaries of credulity. As for the frame rate, the video footage, I think we need the broader context, which I hope we'll get into. Yeah. But if you're just asking about the footage per se, there's footage from a variety of sources. There's footage from Capitol Police. There's footage from other agencies. This is about the DNC footage itself. Correct. And we've reported on this. The DNC has surveillance footage. And it's interesting that the footage that the FBI chose to present was not the Capitol Police footage, not the wide variety of other cameras they could have used. They chose to do the footage from the DNC building itself that has a very dubious chain of custody, and I suspect will be the next avenue of pursuit when it comes to this congressional investigation. So, long story short, what's the big deal with this footage? Well, there were two major things that we proved basically about this footage. One was the frame rate. For those that don't know, that's a semi-technical term simply referring to how many frames per second you see in the video. So there are a lot of frames per second. It captures more of the fluidity and continuous flow of motion. There's no stops, nothing to interpolate. That's simply you get the flow of movement and you don't miss anything. With a slow frame rate, you can miss a lot because if a person is walking by the camera, if the frame is only 1 per second, you only get them in second intervals. And so there's a lot you can miss. If they turn their face to the camera when the frame happened not to be shot, you miss the face shot entirely. For that reason, the standard of security cameras is that the cheapest, crappiest, most dollar store version you can possibly get on the market today is 8 frames per second. Most places we would expect a place like the DNC, which is a place where there's a lot of VIPs, a lot of politicians. It's in a high crime city, not to mention the fact that historically a break-in to the DNC building precipitated one of the biggest scandals in American political history, namely Watergate. So there are a lot of reasons you would expect the DNC to have a very sophisticated security camera. Worst case, they would have the worst commercially available, which is 8 frames per second. That's what you'd find at, a gas station or maybe a McDonald's in the middle of nowhere.
And this is what it's like, by the way. So I was not super familiar with the concept of frame rate. I mean, it's not a complex concept.
But just let me complete the thought, please, is that the frame rate that we have and that they presented to us, the FBI at least, maybe not the original DNC footage, is on average 1.2 frames per second. That is far lower than the worst commercially available. So it's not simply that we're asked to believe the DNC, for whatever reason, decided to get the cheapest available. They had to scour the country maybe for the 1 or 2 antique stores that was carrying a surveillance camera with a frame rate that poor. And so that raises the question, why would the frame rate be so degraded? Was the frame rate tampered with? Where is that original surveillance footage if it was tampered with? What is the chain of custody and so forth? And I have some ideas as the answer to those questions, but that's simply a controversy and a suspicion on its face as to why this critical piece of footage would be represented in a frame rate that is simply unheard of in the entire security community.
Yeah, so that's the part that I found interesting is it's not, and this is, you can correct me if I have the data wrong here, but it's basically the worst quality surveillance video camera you could get on the market would be 8 frames per second. That's like lowest,
Correct.
like bottom of the tier. The
Correct.
DNC security camera footage that the FBI released is 1.2. So 8
Yeah, it
times
averages out to 1.2.
averages to 1.2. So that's, like you said, that's something you can't even buy a camera that gives you that slow of a frame rate on the market anymore, can you?
No, I mean, not that I'm aware of. So again, it would be one thing. It's still unbelievable that they got the cheapest, but 8 frames per second, you can see a lot still. But 1.2 frames per second is clearly tampered with. There clearly needs to be some explanation that would require chain of custody issues and all sorts of things. I simply can't believe that that was the natural original quality of the DNC footage. So was it corrupted somewhere between the DNC and when it got to the FBI? Did the DNC corrupt it? Did the FBI corrupt it? Was it a little bit of both? I thought that was a major kind of smoking gun issue. And again, taken in isolation, it would still be weird and suspicious, but one has to interpret this in the broader context of a million other equally glaring discrepancies that constitute the official story of the January 6 pipe bombs.
So it looks like RFK Jr. is going to get into HHS. It's going to be wild. I cannot wait. Will he bring back tallow fries is the $1 million questions. I had Michael Knowles on the show talking to us a few months ago. Michael says RFK is going to bring back tallow fries. Guess we'll have to see about that. But for now, I would like to introduce you to a new sponsor of our show, Masa Chips. I'm very excited to be partnering with Masa Chips because they are free of seed oils. Masa has only 3 ingredients: organic, nixtamalized corn, grass-fed and finished beef tallow, and Redmond's sea salt. Mwah! Yum! No seed oils, no pesticides, no fake ingredients, no toxins. Grass-fed beef tallow is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet and the premier cooking fat in many cultures for thousands of years. It's very good for your skin, for your brain health. It's loaded with vitamin A, D, K, E, fatty acids with antibacterial properties. Actually, all chips and fries and most fried foods used to be cooked in tallow until like the 80s and the 90s when corporations switched to seed oils to save cost. These companies then funded studies to claim that polyunsaturated fats in seed oils, vegetable oils, were healthier than the saturated fats in tallow, which were blamed for heart disease. And you know what happens after that? Heart disease skyrocketed since the switch, as have obesity and every inflammation-related condition. Gee, I wonder why. Tallow also tastes incredible. My husband loves these chips. So Masa sent us this big box of chips when we signed this partnership, and my family has gone to town on them. My father-in-law loves them. He took bags to the people that he goes to church with. My husband says they're delicious. Masa is crunchier, tastier, and sturdier than other chips. It won't break in your guac the way that some other chips might. So let's maha. Go buy some Masa. I encourage you to check out Masa Chips at masachips.com. Use my promo code Liz Wheeler for a discount. That's masachips.com, promo code Liz Wheeler. Offer good on first-time orders only. Yeah, the totality of evidence, I think, is what law enforcement sometimes calls that, because it's not just this one weird thing and everything else is normal. This is just an additional thing. I mean, I'm actually extremely impressed that you noticed this, because we can show the footage. I think Tim, my producer, I think we have the footage. It's a side-by-side of the old footage the FBI released and the new footage. But if you look at I think it'll be the left side of your screen. That's the original footage that the FBI released, just so that everyone knows what we're looking at here. That's the footage that we're talking about. And you see how when he's walking towards the bench, it's like very glitchy, like you miss a step. It's almost like that game, Darren, where, somebody's hands go like this and the face is smiling. And then underneath the hands it changes. And then when you it's a totally different face. So something could have happened in between those frame rates. But can you zoom out for us for a minute and talk to us about not only this whole story, but this whole story in light of what the Loudermilk-Massie report. This is a new report from the House. They're essentially investigating the January 6th, Liz Cheney's January 6th Select Committee. And they found that actually the original FBI investigation into who is this pipe bomber, they did actually narrow it down to one phone number of who this would most likely be. And then all of a sudden they just stopped investigating who that one phone number is.
Yeah, this report is a very encouraging and interesting report. It's a report which, by the way, confirms and vindicates basically major aspects of our original reporting on this issue. And in fact, Thomas Massey has been working closely with us and should be credited for taking Revolver's research and using his perch at Congress to elevate things to the next level. And so I'm very encouraged by this report, and obviously I'm pleased with the vindication. I think the report separates things into a few really critical components. One of the components is, let's just focus on the DNC pipe bomb for now, is how the DNC pipe bomb, which was placed fairly conspicuously by a bench in front of the DNC parking garage, the incredible story about how that pipe bomb wasn't found. Now, they start at the Secret Service sweep because Kamala Harris was going to go into the building. She was VP elect. She had Secret Service. They did a sweep beforehand, as is customary. The Loudermilk report begins with the Secret Service sweep. When we reported on that, we began earlier because the pipe bombs were planted the evening before. And given that it was in this conspicuous location by a bench, given that January 6th in the morning was a high foot traffic day, given the fact that there are so many pedestrians going by, motorists, and that there was even a regularly stationed security guard who was posted just feet away from the pipe bomb, I always found it astonishing that nobody found it even before the sweep took place the morning of the 6th, given how much activity was going on there. But the sweep itself is remarkable because you had, I think, 10 different agents, multiple different canine teams of 2 people each. And the report actually goes into even more detail than we've reported on just how many opportunities the Secret Service and trained canine details had of just walking within feet of this and magically not finding it. It's quite amazing. And it's very clear, even though I think the report was very careful to leave speculation out of it, it's very clear that cumulatively the report is trying to convey with a lot of justification that there's simply no innocent explanation for how the Secret Service could have missed it. It seems like they deliberately missed it because how could you have so many people right around there? You have the canine units. They said that the bombs had explosives. Did the canines have COVID that day, so they just didn't smell it? It was right there to be found and to be seen. And yet, for some reason, this DNC pipe bomb was sitting out there undiscovered by all these Secret Service people, by all the pedestrians, by all the security guards. They're undiscovered for like 17 hours. And when was the DNC bomb discovered? It was discovered within a 15-minute window that coincided exactly with the Ray Epps orchestrated breach at the west perimeter of the Capitol. And that synchronicity of the discovery of the pipe bombs and the attack on the Capitol is a critical aspect of the smoking gun that I think the report didn't get into in terms of its implications. It did touch it a little bit. But they went into how the Secret Service missed it. They went into the equally damning fact of what the Secret Service and Capitol Police did after the bomb was discovered. This is a video that was so explosive. Thomas Massey got it released. He bent Kevin McCarthy to get this released. Most important video of all of January 6th. It shows the DNC bomb being discovered at this highly suspicious time, coinciding with the attack on the Capitol. And the reaction to it was remarkable. Totally lackadaisical. The Secret Service agents, Capitol Police, they stand around basically not a care in the world, doing nothing. They're supposed to protect Kamala Harris, for God's sake. They're not doing that. They're not protecting themselves. They're standing around casually around this allegedly explosive device. The real money shot here is when they allow a group of school children to cross the street right in the direction of the bomb and walk right by it, feet from it. Not a concern in the world. So first there's this weird thing about how they missed it in the first place. Then there's the weird thing about how they act as though they clearly somehow knew in advance the bomb posed no physical danger to them. How would they have known that? And then, of course, there's the timing of the discovery of these bombs, which is the worst and most utterly inexplicable thing. Both the RNC and DNC bomb were planted the evening before, in the evening of January 5th. They both sat undiscovered for between 16 and 17 hours and were both independently discovered within a 15-minute time frame that perfectly coincided with the Ray Epps orchestrated attack and breach of the Capitol grounds. And one of the pipe bombs was discovered by a woman who now works for a defense contractor group focusing on disinformation. I'll leave it to people to understand what that is. And the other one was found by an undercover plainclothes Capitol Police officer.
In 2 weeks, President Trump is going to come back to office. Thank goodness. We've just been killed by inflation for so long. I can't wait for Trump to be back. But you know, the deep state, they're going to plant traps for President Trump during and after his presidency. In a sense, it's still kind of unpredictable what we're facing. And while Trump will certainly help the economy, he is just one man and he's not going to be around forever. So how can you plan for the future and your retirement? Well, now is the time to call the only precious metal dealer that I trust, American Hartford Gold. They'll show you how to protect your savings and your retirement accounts by diversifying your wealth portfolio with physical gold and silver. My husband and I just did this. With the finest products, amazing customer service, and a buyback commitment, American Hartford Gold has a 5-star rating from thousands of reviews and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. And best of all, American Hartford Gold supports content like this that is committed to bringing you the truth. Tell them I sent you, and they'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first order. Call them now. You can click the link in the description of this episode, or you can call 866-996-5172. That's 866-996-5172, or text Liz to 998899. Again, the phone number is 866-996-5172, or text Liz to 998899.
If you look at this, there's simply no innocent explanation for this. And the scandal is so big because it can't be contained simply to the pipe bomb. The synchronicity between the discovery of the pipe bomb and the Ray Epps orchestrated breach in the Capitol, which we've reported on independently, and it was actually what we first became very known for, not just Ray Epps, but the host of very suspicious characters who coordinated to effect that breach at around 1 p.m. at the west perimeter of the Capitol. The fact that that breach was synchronized with the quote-unquote independent discovery of the RNC and DNC bomb means that there's in all likelihood, a much broader orchestration involved such that that synchronicity could happen. And therefore, the major aspects of January 6th, the pipe bombs, which were the only explosives that the media was covering, and 2, the breach that kicked everything off. If those 2 things were hoaxes and setups, then the entire January 6th story completely crumbles. That's why we face such hostility and resistance from the regime. Just to give you one example of how hot and dangerous this story has been, I think the one example, there have been a lot of them, but there was an FBI agent who was reading our stories, who shared some of them with his colleagues, and simply on that basis had his security clearance revoked and was put on leave. He's now been reinstated.
Just for reading your reporting?
Yes.
Oh, my word.
He's since been, but that's how much hostility it's been. But now I think with this Loudermilk report, we're getting more vindication. We're in the end stages. That video of the DNC pipe bomb discovery, that elevated this story into escape velocity. And now basically it's an end stage where the incoming FBI director, Kash Patel, He has it on a silver platter. We've given it to him on a silver platter. He just needs to take that extra 5% and bring the story to its final conclusion. Look into the things. Why did the FBI drop these leads? Who were the lead case officers responsible for the investigation? That will open everything up. Look, it's very clear what happened now, and this is still more clear when you look at the Loudermilk-Massie report. The FBI was investigating this very strongly, very extensively in the early stages. Then, by all seeming measures, they completely dropped the case around the spring of 2021. So I think the sensible and rational conclusion, certainly the conclusion that I've come to after studying this very closely for 4 years, basically, is that the FBI originally did an investigation. They found out what happened. They found that the actual thing that happened was profoundly embarrassing to the government, and then they covered it up. And that explains why they go from this intense investigation where they're doing all this stuff, they're interviewing people, they're following leads, then all of a sudden everything drops around May of 2021. And the investigation is done. In fact, to give you a sense of how done the investigation was, I know for a fact that there is another agency. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say which one, so I'm just not to be safe. But I know for a fact that there is another agency looking into this in early 2022. And they wanted to look at surveillance footage of that pipe bomb location from January 6th. They had to go to the DNC to look at that footage. They couldn't go to the FBI to look at it. Why? Well, one can only assume that the FBI no longer even had it if they had it in the first place. So the investigation was basically dead from the FBI's perspective by early 2022. And I suspect much earlier than that, around springtime of 2021, they found it. They say, oh my God, this isn't going to look good. Let's just stay quiet. This is done. Cover their tracks. And that's that. And that's been the state of the investigation ever since.
Over the break, President Trump said that his New Year's resolution was for Americans to be happy and healthy. That sounds nice. And one of the best ways that you can become happier and healthier is with a good night's sleep, thanks to our friends at Cozy Earth. I have their best-selling bamboo sheet set made from 100% premium viscose from bamboo. And let me tell you, it is amazing. Their breathable sheets are uniquely soft and only get softer with every wash. They also sell a bamboo pajama set, which is perfect for this time of year. These are awesome. Crafted with a soft stretch knit that features enhanced breathability and a luxurious drape, which means it's cute. This lightweight set sleeps degrees cooler than cotton to keep your temperature just right throughout the night. Cozy Earth bedding products have a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty. You can't go wrong. It also, that tells you that they stand by their products. Otherwise, they wouldn't offer you that deal. A better year starts with better sleep. Wrap yourself in Cozy Earth. Don't wait. Head to cozyearth.com/Liz. Right now, you can use my exclusive code Liz for up to 40% off. That's cozyearth.com/Liz. If you get a post-purchase survey, say that you heard about Cozy Earth from the Liz Wheeler Show podcast. cozyearth.com/Liz. And that's what the Loudermilk-Massie report says too, is when Loudermilk and Massie were interviewing or requesting information from other federal agencies about what happened to put the pieces together, these federal agencies were stonewalling them. These are members of Congress who have the authority of oversight.
There's one in particular. So look, I know there are a lot of people say a lot of things. The incentives, especially on Twitter, is just you say anything. And I've noticed this. Now this is such a hot thing. You just say anything. You could even take what we've done and put a summary with some incorrect stuff added to it, and it'll explode and you get a lot of engagement. So there's so much incentive to say stuff. I've tried to be extremely cautious and extremely conservative from the beginning for a variety of reasons. But I feel that, there's a responsibility to this story to make sure that things are reported in the most cautious and responsible way. So there's a lot that I know or strongly suspect that I haven't even said yet due to this abundance of caution. There's only been one name that I've been comfortable coming out with and saying, I have supreme confidence that this person is involved in the cover-up of the story. And we did a full piece on this, and this person is mentioned briefly in the Loudermilk report. That person is Ashen Benedict, who at the time of the pipe bomb investigation was the head of the Washington field office of the ATF. People don't know this, but the ATF was actually leading the first response to this, and he was the guy in charge.
What is his name again? Ashton Benedict?
Ashen Benedict. Now, he was a 25-year veteran of the ATF on January 6, 2021, when he was the responder to the pipe bomb.
I've never even heard of him.
Well, you got to read my piece on it. It's very interesting. So after this, he was 25 years in the ATF. After January 6, for whatever reason, D.C. Mayor Bowser shuffles him over to run the Metro PD. Why the hell would a guy who's been in the ATF for 25 years all of a sudden go to the Metro PD and run it? And then shortly after that, he goes to the Capitol Police, where he remains today. And guess what he is? He's the head of dignitary protection and intelligence at the Capitol Police currently. This is a man who is nominally in charge of the safety of all of our congressional members, who, by the way, in a closed meeting, when asked, how do you explain the fact that the first response to the pipe bomb was allowing children to walk right by it? He said, oh, we were just concerned that people would panic. They didn't didn't want people to panic. He said that with a straight face, as to explain that that's a normal protocol, that, oh, we just let people walk right by the pipe bomb, including school children, because we didn't want to panic. This guy is the head of dignitary protection for the Capitol Police. So it's pretty amazing. And he's mentioned in this Loudermilk report as someone who, surprise, surprise, has not been very cooperative. But it's very interesting because he was shuffled into positions that would be, shall we say, ideal positions to manage a cover-up, both within the Metro PD and within the Capitol Police. And he has very much been in a position to stonewall congressional inquiries into the response to the very event in which he was a lead responder as the head of the ATF.
So wait a second. I want to make sure that I understand the connection here. Just explain it to me again. So this guy, head of the ATF, is he, for lack of a better explanation, is he, you said, we have 95% of the information, Kash Patel, when he's FBI director, you're handing it to him on a silver platter. He can uncover this last 5%. Is this guy at the ATF part of that last 5%? Would we find out maybe who planted this pipe bomb, who was behind it, who did that?
Well, he is at a different agency, so that wouldn't necessarily be under the direct authority of Kash Patel, but I think there's enough information within the FBI, including the information as to who all these leads were, why were they dropped, because there are many references to leads that were inexplicably dropped. And I think most crucially...
186 of them.
Right. Most crucially, who were the lead investigators of this story? Because technically, the lead investigator for the whole thing, who is the head of the Washington field office, his name is Stephen D'Antuono.
Yeah.
We first reported on this guy. Guess where he was before he was running this for the DC field office? He was running the field office in Detroit, where he oversaw the Fednapping Whitmer kidnapping hoax. He literally goes from that hoax with so many striking parallels to January 6 hoax. Of all the agents in the country who could have been handpicked by Christopher Wray, Wray chooses this guy to run the DC field office in the months leading up to January 6 and afterwards. And he becomes the face of the pipe bomb investigation.
And then he lies, right?
Yeah. I suspect, due to all the heat that was generated from our reporting on this, which singled him out extensively, he quit that position, which is a stepping stone to the upper levels of the FBI. He quit that position to go back work for accounting. So he was working for KPMG. But For some reason, he volunteered himself subsequently to the Judiciary Committee to answer questions, and Thomas Massie, basically got all of our reporting and used that reporting and some of my advice to say, okay, we're going to ask DeAntoine one of these things. Couple of the things he was asked is, one, he was asked, who were the lead investigators on this? Who are the guys actually doing this investigation? He claimed he couldn't recall their names. He also claimed, when asked, have you used geofencing technology to try to identify the pipe bomber? He said, yeah, we tried that a little bit, but the telecom company came back and said the data was corrupted. We've since confirmed, we reported on this earlier, but we since confirmed from the Loudermilk report that the House admin asked the telecom companies, is this true? They all denied it. They said, no, we didn't give any corrupt data. So the guy, presumably, I mean, I don't want to say he lied, but I'm simply going to say that the telecom companies have all contradicted that claim. And so in addition to that, he said, I don't remember who are the people who are running this investigation. This is supposed to be, the January 6th is supposed to be the most important investigation in like DOJ history. And the pipe bomb issue was the most domestic terrorist-like aspect of this event that everyone was trying to inflate as the worst event of domestic terror since the Civil War in Biden's term. So, so one thing that Kash Patel needs to do is find out who are the people directly running this, because that will open the doors to what was a chain of custody with the surveillance footage. Who are the people who are identified as suspects? Why were they dropped? When were they dropped? And I have supreme confidence that if this is taken seriously, that extra 5% can be done. And once that's discovered, then I think where exactly Ashen Benedict fits into the picture, where some of the other people who fit into the picture, how do we explain the fact that they're saying, oh, the pipe bomber planted the bombs to divert resources from the attack on the Capitol? Well, if that's true, how did this pipe bomber know that both of the pipe bombs would be independently discovered at that exact 15-minute time frame window, when one of the people who discovered it was this random bystander who...
Yeah, wasn't it like a woman carrying a basket of laundry that supposedly found it?
Yeah, she's a woman carrying a basket of laundry. She was working at the time for First Net Authority, which just happens to be an emergency response company that had signed a major deal with with the FBI that cross-pollinates with a lot of these emergency management types, and who has now moved on to a company called Pendulum, which is very clearly a government contractor, on all likelihood for the DHS, that tracks disinformation on the internet. This person is the one who found the RNC bomb under extremely implausible circumstances. And then the person who found the bomb at the DNC, just like 10 minutes after that, was an undercover Capitol Police officer who just happened in that short time frame, just miraculously happened to find it when no one else saw it, no pedestrians, no motorists, not the security guard, not the Secret Service K-9 teams that were trampling over it effectively and didn't manage to see it. No, the plainclothes guy just happens to walk right by it shortly after Carlin Younger finds it. When these two bombs were sitting out there for 16 hours, no one finds it. Within the 15-minute time frame, perfectly coinciding with the utterly suspicious Ray Epps orchestrated attack on the Capitol. That's when these people find it. And the pipe bomber had to count on that happening and just got miraculously lucky. I mean, it doesn't add up. And that, and that's not even counting the stuff about the security camera footage. It doesn't count the stuff about Kamala Harris. This is a point I've made a lot of. Kamala Harris was in the building when the bomb was discovered. Think of how much investment they've made into this idea of January 6th being an event of domestic terror. Why didn't Kamala Harris milk that politically? Why wasn't that a staple of her campaign rhetoric, saying, oh, I almost got killed by the MAGA pipe bomb? Instead, she didn't mention it at all. She covered it up studiously for an entire year. And then when that information was leaked that she was in the DNC, she never mentioned it at all. Biden never mentioned it at all. He took the time in the third anniversary of January 6th, give this hour-long speech, which for him is a lot. Think of what it takes for a guy like Biden to stand up for an hour and give a speech for an hour. That's how important it was. And in this hour-long speech, he didn't mention once that his own vice president almost lost her life to the MAGA pipe bomb. They bent over backwards to fit this narrative, and they've invented things. But one thing that they didn't have to invent is Kamala Harris was in the building. She did come within feet of this pipe bomb. But for some reason, the thing that you would expect to be their number one talking point about January 6th is their most carefully guarded secret. Why? Again, all of these things that independently wouldn't make any sense, all of these things come together. And that's what's so damning about this. That's why this is one of the biggest scandals, I think, in recent American history. And I'm very excited that we're so close. But I'm also, it's very important that someone like Kash Patel be willing to take the heat for driving this to its conclusion, because I think it's gotten to the point where I can only do so much more. I don't think I can do much more. I think what needs to be done now can only be done by the future FBI director.
Pray for his protection. My goodness. They're not going to want this exposed. This is, I guess, the culmination of all of your years of reporting is what is the main takeaway that the American people should take from this reporting. And who, I know you don't like to speculate, but you mentioned earlier that you have ideas of what you think happened. Who was this that orchestrated this, and how high up in the Biden administration was knowledge of this plan known?
That's what I hope to uncover. I think that will require the additional 5%. We have different puzzle pieces. We have a lot of the puzzle, but it's one of those things where it's that end stage of a puzzle where everything just has to connect. And I know Ash and Benedict is a piece, and the discovery of the pipe bomb is a piece, and the Secret Service is most certainly a piece, and all of these different things. But it's very clear, without any doubt, that the FBI was involved in the cover-up. Mm-hmm. The Capitol Police were involved in the cover-up, if not the operation itself. The ATF was involved in the cover-up, if not the operation itself, and the Secret Service. So FBI, Capitol Police, ATF, and Secret Service all have their hands dirty on this. And as for the FBI, I'm not even convinced that the FBI did the operation. I think it's very plausible that the FBI looked into it and found that, holy crap, this isn't some MAGA guy. This is ATF. This is Capitol Police. This is some weird Secret Service thing. And then they're like, we don't want to get into this. This investigation stops here. And the FBI was in charge of the cover-up. That's very plausible to me.
And maybe that's why, according to the Loudermilk-Massie report, every one of those agencies that you just mentioned were named as one of the agencies that was stonewalling Loudermilk and Massie as they tried to investigate this. Darren, I really appreciate you being on the show. I appreciate this reporting. Guys, we're going to put the links to all of these different articles that Darren referenced during this interview. We'll put those in the description of the episode and in the comment sections and on my X account. Also, obviously, this should go without saying, but follow Darren on X. What is your handle on X?
I'm at Darren J. Beattie, and I'd really encourage everyone. This is, this story, we were the only ones talking about it for a long time. We pushed this. We shaped the national conversation on this on a shoestring budget. It was a very high leverage thing. And so people appreciate this. If they want to see more of this and help us take this to the next level and other stories as well, I'd encourage you, go to revolver.news. Share our stories at the very least. And if you're able, join the fight by supporting us, by subscribing or donating. This is outside of the playpen. I'm not kidding, and that we've reported on this. This was actually public. That there was an agent who lost his security clearance simply for sharing one of our stories. This has been reinstated, but that's the level of hysteria. And you don't see that level of hysteria unless the regime has invested a lot in this lie. And it's a lie they've been shoving down our throats for 4 years now. And they're not giving it up easily, but it's too late. It's too late for them. Ever since that surveillance footage of the DNC pipe bomb discovery that Thomas Massie helped to release, ever since that came out, it's too late. So the regime's just in damage control now. And it's up to us to help take this. We're at 95%. It's up to us to get to 100% because, these kinds of things, we almost never get the resolution that we desire, that full resolution we desire. This is one of the rare cases where I think that's absolutely realistic and can absolutely happen if we maintain the resolve to just push and get that additional 5%. So please go to revolver.news and support us any way you can.
The word that comes to my mind when you talk about the resolution, that 5%, one word comes to my mind: justice. Justice. Mm-hmm. You are the media. Not only are you reporting and raising your voice, you are making a difference in putting leverage on our representatives in Congress to make this happen. Don't let them get there and become a swamp creature. Don't let them just embarrass publicly the former regime. Justice. We demand justice. You do, and I do. Darren, thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
The guest for tomorrow's show is Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is a former CIA targeter who actually went on the Shawn Ryan show about 6 months ago in June or July, warning us that there are 1,000 radical Islamist terrorists who are hidden among us here in the United States. And she said that these terrorists are going to wage coordinated attacks against us in 2025. So we're going to talk to her tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss that. The question that I have for her, the primary question, is if we have these sleeper cells of terrorists who have embraced this genocidal ideology, this jihadist ideology, they want to kill us. They have proven that they will kill us given the opportunity. What are they waiting for? Are they waiting for the word? Go ahead and wage your attack now. When is that word going to come? Who is that word coming from? Is this, what do you mean when you say coordinated? Is there someone pulling the strings? We're going to talk to her about who these people are, how they came into our country, and who's controlling the strings, what we as Americans can do to protect ourselves, given that this threat is not just something that's maybe coming in the future, but it's here now and we're facing it. So we're going to talk to her tomorrow. And a lot of you have asked me what I think of the Shawn Ryan theory about Matthew Livelsberger, who was the Green Beret who detonated the Cybertruck outside of Trump Hotel. We're going to break that down, break all of it down, because Shawn Ryan's theories are kind of chilling. They're kind of wild. There's some credibility to some of it. I have some questions about some other aspects of the theory. That's going to come tomorrow.